Hey guys, what's up? It's Angie B, and welcome to another episode of the Exodus Group. And thank you for joining our podcast on YouTube. And thank you for sharing, liking, and subscribing. Today we have such a wonderful guest here. She DM'd me on Instagram, and you too can do that too and tell your story on Instagram. Tell your story to us as well. But she DM'd us on Instagram, and I can't wait to hear her story. So Les, welcome to the Exodus Group. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So you told me a little bit about yourself when we talked a little bit on Sunday. You're in Alaska?
Yes. Moved up here for the preaching work.
You moved up here for the Lord. For the Lord. Okay, so...
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you're Jehovah's Witness, your story, just talk.
So both of my grandmothers on either side of my family were the ones to introduce the witnesses to the family. So technically I'm third generation.
Okay.
J-Dub. I was baptized at 13, had, I feel like, a very typical Jehovah's Witness experience.
Right.
It wasn't awful, but it wasn't great.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how not great it was while growing up in it. And now looking back, I'm like, ooh, that's not normal. But yeah, I got a typical JW experience, got baptized at 13, married at 20, pioneered, did all the need grading stuff, joined different language groups. And like, I was full gung ho, always doing what I could to try to be the best witness I could.
Right.
But I never felt like I was living up to what people expected of me still. So that's why my ex-husband and I, yes.
Hi, puppy. Hey, kitty. I call everything puppy, but hey, kitty.
This is Noisy Beans.
Hi, Noisy
my daughter.
You're welcome anytime.
But my ex-husband and I decided to move up here to this small town in Alaska called Valdez, and there's less than 4,000 people that live in this town, and it's 5 hours away from modern civilization. So we decided to move up here because the congregation was really small, but also the territory is really large. Right. The territory that the congregation is expected to cover is the size of West Virginia.
And you can count your time driving from one house to another and get all your time for the Lord, because the Lord counts time. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we would start our time as soon as we left the Kingdom Hall. It would be 2 hours before we got to the first house.
Oh,
so
wow.
I counted that time.
I would have too.
Yeah, some people didn't. Some people were really strict like that, but I was counting that time. 10-hour days, spent 10 hours in the car, and yeah, so we moved up here, and honestly, I felt like for the first year I lived here, I was more spiritual. I was commenting more. I got over my stage anxiety of giving talks. I was doing a lot better with my service time and like informal witnessing, and like I felt like I was like being a JW superstar.
Right.
But then when the pandemic hit, Zoom meetings made things weird. And I felt like my congregation locally here just went unhinged. The comments that people would make were so wild and outlandish. And then a new couple moved in, a special pioneer couple, and they would make the worst homophobic comments I had ever heard. And it got to the point where I stopped going out in service because I was embarrassed to invite anyone to the meeting. And I told my ex-husband that I didn't feel comfortable going out in service and preaching when people in the congregation were making comments like that. Right. And so together we did some research outside of approved sources, but still very scholarly sources, just because I thought that I could prove that homosexuality was never actually mentioned in the Bible, and that the governing body should reprint it and take it out. Because I still thought this was Jehovah's organization. I just thought the chariot needed to turn.
Of course, right. We all start there.
Yes. Yep, we all start there. We all start trying to fix the organization. So I did a ton of research. I did a research paper that I was going to send to the branch, and I had all these sources and all these Bible principles. I met with a couple other local pastors to see how their church came to the conclusion that homosexuality is not the sin that was being talked about in the scriptures. I did a lot of work with it, and I told one friend, and that one friend kind of started to tell other people, and it kept getting around, and then people were upset with me for looking into this, because like I still wanted to be a witness. I wanted it to be the truth, but I just didn't agree with it, and that's a really big thing to not agree with, because I had several friends within the organization that a couple of them had come out to me, but others that I just knew were closeted.
We all know the ones that are closeted. I'm sorry. There's a brother that did my father's funeral that I'm sitting there looking at him. Like as a kid, I never saw it, but when he did my father's funeral, he had this huge ring on his pinky finger, and he was just this the whole time, and just and I'm like, oh my God, I never saw it. Okay. Yeah, we're going to the Pride Parade when? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and like I would think about my friends that struggled with being gay, or I had a couple friends that told me that they felt like they were trans, and like I had friends that was a big deal to them, and to me, I just couldn't understand. Couldn't understand how an all-loving God could hate something so natural, because I never trusted when anyone would say it's a choice to be gay, because if we had a choice, would anyone be attracted to men? No. So
anybody a choice to have that hardship either. Like when I choose to go through that BS, excuse my French, of living the life that's going to damn near kill me in some instances. You get what I'm saying? In the 70s and 80s, it did kill a lot of people. So would I choose to live that life? Yeah, that's one question I had to. Yeah.
And I just couldn't understand how an all-loving, all-knowing God wouldn't accept that. That he knew this was going to happen. He knew that people were going to have that. It's natural. And he knew that, and he created everyone. So why would he be so hard pressed on that? And especially because like one thing that I told other people was Jehovah made provisions in the past for people to be able to serve him easier. Why can't he make this provision now? Why does it have to stay the same? So that was a really big deal, and it really offended people that I was doing that research, because I used JW Library, Watchtower Online, mostly the Bible and a few other scholarly sources, but nothing apostate. Like I was still terrified of apostates, and yeah, I mean, we're so scary. But yeah, so I started to get really discouraged from there, and because of how people were reacting to that, and I started to notice other things too, and it was to the point where I had called a family member and told this family member that I was struggling with my faith, and I didn't think I wanted to be a witness anymore. And I told them the reasons why. And I called this particular family member because I always felt like they were very level-headed, and they were not always a Jehovah's Witness. They chose to come in later. Like they were raised around it, but still lived out in the world, and they still chose to be a witness. So I thought that would help me. And instead I just got a long lecture. And I got off the phone with this family member, and I was like in tears, because it was a terrible conversation, just made things worse. And I went out and told my ex-husband, and he was like, okay, so did that help? And I was like, no, I definitely don't want to be a witness anymore. Like after talking to her. But I still thought maybe things can change. And I still very much believed in the Bible and in Jehovah and everything. But it was a rough several months where I had a lot of suicidal thoughts. I was self-harming a lot, because it was just, I felt like it would be easier to just die and not have to deal with figuring this out.
Yeah.
Because I thought, if witnesses are right, then I can just kill myself and wake up in the new system.
Exactly.
Or I could, and that just seemed like the easiest option. The day of the memorial this year in 2021, I was driving home from work and I passed a little body of water and I thought, I'll just drive my car into that.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I can't do that. I got home and I was showering and I was thinking about, I was trying to reflect on Jesus. I'm like, this is Jesus's special day. And then I thought, wait a second, he died like 2,000 years ago. Why am I still suffering?
Ooh, good question. Yeah.
I just sat there with that thought until I started crying even more. And then I went to go take a nap because I thought maybe that'll calm me down. But I ended up Googling how many Tylenol PMs does it take to kill yourself.
Wow.
The answer is you can only cause irreversible liver damage. You cannot actually kill yourself. You'll just be in a lot of pain.
Okay, great. Thanks to know. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean,
PM. Got it. Thanks. Okay.
Yes. But yeah, I think that was like my lowest low point.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on the memorial. This was the first time I had shown my face on Zoom in months. Nobody said anything. Nobody said, "Oh, Celeste, we're so happy to see you."
No one said we missed you or we welcome you or hey, we missed you.
And the thing with this congregation is there's only 26 people in it.
Okay.
So they notice when someone's not there.
Exactly.
You notice. And
50 people can fit on a Zoom call. You can figure out who's not there really quickly.
And they would always see my husband on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And after, like, they asked about me like maybe twice, but then people just stopped asking. And that was really discouraging to me because I thought these people were my friends.
Exactly.
And so after the memorial, I told my ex-husband like what I had been feeling, and we talked about it more. And I told him, I was like, I don't think I want to go to meetings anymore. I don't think this is for me. I cannot. And I was more concerned with misrepresenting witnesses at this point. I was more concerned with the organization because I still thought, you know what, this is probably the closest thing to God's organization on earth. That was my thought process then. So I was mostly concerned with the fact that I support homosexuality and that's not what witnesses do.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want to give a bad reputation to the witnesses because I don't believe everything that they believe.
Right.
So he asked if I would talk to the elders and I agreed. And so I met with them. It was a very unproductive visit. And he met with them with me. And when we hung up, he was like, well, that was weird. And he's still fully believing at this point. He was still fully believing. And he was just like, that was the weirdest call I've ever been on. But I basically told them, like, I don't believe in the Bible. I don't want any help. I'll still support, I'll host the Pioneer Dinner here. I don't want to disassociate. I'll be as supportive as possible. I want to support Cody pioneering, do whatever.
Right.
But then a couple of days later, I got a call from my sister and she said, I heard you're asking the branch why homosexuality is wrong.
The branch? And you never went to the branch?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
The branch. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, wait, for those who don't know, for those who don't know, the branch is like, let's say Jehovah's Witnesses are a McDonald's corporation and your head manager reports to his district manager. The branch is the district where the district manager reports to. Like that's your head zone office. So every zone has a branch. The US has a branch by themselves, which is the Watchtower organization, which is the head branch, but that's a whole nother topic. But that's what the branch is. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But yeah, my sister said, I heard you were asking them why homosexuality is wrong. And I said, no, I was telling them why they're wrong with their translation. And so we talked for about an hour and had a really productive conversation about it. I told her my research, but I told her I didn't want to share too much with her because I didn't want to influence her faith.
Of course.
Because that's really a terrible thing to have your faith shaken like that. And it's hard. And so I didn't want to be responsible for doing that to anyone else. And she was like, well, what are you going to do if they say, no, you're wrong? And I said, well, I guess it won't really matter. And she's like, why not? And I said, well, because I'm inactive. And so that one is what really got her. But we hung up the phone. I thought it was still a great conversation. A few days later, she calls me back and says, I have been crying for 72 hours about this, blah, 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 blah. And she gave me an ultimatum. She said, if you don't tell the rest of the family by Friday, I will. And so I was basically forced out.
Yeah.
Because at this point, the elders locally had said that they were not going to tell anyone that I was bad association. I was still being invited to things. People were just trying to encourage me.
Something people say they really need the people. Sorry, just saying. They
really,
if
we need the numbers.
We need the numbers. But if you're in a congregation like where I was of 100, yeah, deuce woman, bye. What city was she in? Your sister?
She was down in Florida.
Okay, yeah, they got good numbers there for then. Okay,
yeah. Well, and she had just moved back she was need grading in Peru.
When you say need grading, because I never heard that term until we talked the first night. So,
I don't know. Maybe that's a regional term.
It might be because I did it.
Different witnesses have different slang.
They do. I was doing this. I served with a need grade in Georgia. And that's what got me out too. But go ahead. Okay. Need grading. Love that one.
Yes. Yeah. So our family, it was so funny because growing up, we were the kids that the congregation felt the need to take care of because our parents are weird. Our dad was disfellowshipped for about 10 years before, and then he died while still being disfellowshipped, but he was still he was physically out, but extremely mentally in. He was the most Jehovah's Witness person I've ever met in my entire life. And so me and my brother and my sister, we were all like, oh yeah, we beat the odds. We turned out so good for Jehovah, despite what we went through. So a lot of people looked up to us, oh, those Addison kids, they're really good kids.
Yeah.
And people would brag on us that they knew us, that they went to congregation with us at one point, just because we were all just doing great,
right? I get
spiritually that. by JW standards. But yeah, so my sister basically forced me to tell the rest of my family. I had some decent reactions, some really nasty reactions, but ultimately, because I told my family members, I said, the elders say I'm not bad association. Okay. So if you still want to talk to me, you can.
Right.
And my grandma and my mom were like, oh, of course we're going to still talk to you. And my brother was the same way. But my sister and my aunt were like, if you don't love Jehovah, we don't have anything to talk about. And I was like, how rude, but okay. But my mom's husband was not happy with her continuing to talk to me because he was worried for her spirituality. I don't know what he's worried about. So she ended up talking to her elders.
Congregation looks at you.
Yeah. She talked to her elders and they said to call my elders. So my mom called our Kobe and told him that oh yeah, Celeste says she doesn't want to be a witness anymore. And she said, Celeste says she doesn't believe in the Bible. Is she still good association? And the Kobe said, well, that's news to us when it's not. I literally had this conversation with them.
Wow.
So my mom called and was like, I guess I said something I wasn't supposed to. And I was like, no, I definitely already told them that. But if they want to act brand new, whatever. So the next day they called my husband and asked him if I would meet with them. And instead of asking me,
for those who are not witnesses, when you're married in an organization, you go through the husband. The women do not have any right to their own lives, standards, or whatever the hell. I wasn't married in an organization, so I didn't get this treatment, but I'm hearing this more and more for those coming out, especially in judicial committees. If the man cheats, on the wife can't come in a judicial committee. However, if the woman cheats on the husband, or if the woman does anything that's outside of Jehovah's standards, quote unquote, the head of the household, quote unquote, has to come into the meeting to basically tame his winch. So, for those who are not witnesses, that's what that is about. That's the reason why they called him and not just directly call her. Because I know she has a cell phone. I called her before. She has a cell phone. She pays her bills. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So and I think it's good to note that my husband and I, we did not have a traditional Jehovah's Witness marriage because we were very much equals, and it really bothered people how he didn't control me.
Good.
It really bothered people how equal we were.
Right.
And so when they called him, he was like, well, I don't know if she wants to have a meeting.
Call her. Why you calling me? That's what my husband will tell me right now. Why you calling me? Call her. She has a phone.
But I ended up just going ahead and meeting with them because at this point I was sick of it, because the only people I really cared about keeping in contact with were my grandma and my mom. Mm-hmm. But they had both decided, because my grandma lives with my aunt, my sister, my stepmom, and then my grandma. So that's 4 very strongly opinionated women in one house. Yeah. And so my grandma had initially said that she was going to keep talking to me because she understood. Because I told her, it's either this or I kill myself. And if Jehovah is the all-loving, all-knowing God that I've been taught he is, he would rather me be alive.
Right.
And that's what my husband would say is, Jehovah only expects your best. And if your best is being alive, that's all you can do. Because people could not comprehend how he was okay with me leaving, which he wasn't okay with it, but he was just happy to see me happy.
He was happy to see you happy and alive, basically. You're still here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but my grandma was influenced by other family members, and the pain in her voice when we had this conversation, that she asked me to not call her anymore. That broke me. And so at that point I was like, F it. I'm out of here. I'm going apostate. I don't want to do this anymore. And so my timeline was sped up a lot more than I initially had wanted it to be, but I'm glad it went the way it went. Yeah. And in my elders meeting, they said it was not a judicial committee, but there were 3 elders there.
It was.
And they were, my husband didn't join because he didn't want to. He said it wasn't his business. And so he didn't join, but one elder, he said, can't you see that this is Jehovah's spirit? 3 grown men on a Friday night meeting with you to try to help you spiritually. Can't you just see that this is Jehovah's spirit? And I said, I don't know that that's what this is, but I know that since I have decided I don't believe in sin or the Bible, or that I'm inherently evil, since I no longer subscribe to these ideals, I don't want to kill myself. I have not hurt myself for the first time in so long. And the Kobe, who is in on the meeting, said, well, by turning away from Jehovah, you're basically killing yourself anyway, because you're not going to make it through Armageddon. And I just looked at him. I said, yeah, but it's not at my own hand.
That's the best answer that you could give at the time.
Yeah, well, the answer I gave was a little bit more graphic, but I'm censoring myself.
Oh, please don't censor yourself here. This is an open web. I love cuss words like damn fucking shit. Okay, let's go.
I told him, like, I looked at him, and it was over Zoom. And I looked at him and I was like, okay, but I'm not slitting my own wrist and bleeding out in a bathtub. Like, yeah, maybe I'll die in Armageddon. Maybe Armageddon won't come.
Which is funny, because in their eyes, and I'm going to use the word funny, it's not funny. But to those who are not witnesses, yes, they would prefer you be found dead in a tub of blood in your own house than not be a witness anymore. And that is just when I realized that, because I've had suicidal thoughts too, never tried anything, but they're there. Those lonely days are there. For all of us. We all have lonely days. And when you have those days and you're thinking about it and you're looking at your weapon of choice, it's sad to know that if I was a witness at this time, in this moment, for those who are not witnesses, the out in the Jehovah's Witness mind is this: if I die now, I won't sin, so therefore I can go speed past and go through to paradise on earth. Second, my family will be proud of me.
You're basically dying a martyr.
You're dying a martyr. And third, I didn't sin, which doesn't make any fuck sense at all. That you're not here enjoying your life. You're not here discovering the beauty that you are. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's one of the hardest things you're ever going to go through. Yes, you're continuing. I was triggered today. I almost canceled on you today because I was triggered today. But I said, nope. Talk to her. Yes, whole long story. Nothing. It wasn't that serious, but hey, it triggered. Yeah. And yeah, it's just one of those things where you're like, I'm so proud of you that you sat down and you had that comeback for him. That you had that comeback for the elders. I don't know at the time of my JC that I had that comeback to an elder. To me, they were still almighty and all knowing and knew everything when I got kicked out. So it was really weird, but I'm proud of you for that. Just like, you know what, at least I'm alive right now, and then you kill me then, cool. But it wasn't. I'm so proud of you for saying that.
Thank you. And you know what? I gotta give so much credit to Clancy, my therapist. She is a superstar, because I would have never been able to do that if I've been in therapy most of my life. But I don't know what's different about this therapist, because she doesn't even really talk that much. But I was able to figure out so much stuff in a very short amount of time about, honestly, most of the negative things that I ever thought about myself stemmed from being a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah. And she never said any of this to me. My therapist is very neutral, because professional.
Right.
Yeah. You're not supposed to give opinions. You're not supposed to tell people what to do. But going to therapy helped me to realize just how miserable I was because of the fact that I was a Jehovah's Witness. Because of course I've still had extremely down days. I still get anxious. But it's the level is so much different. The things that I have dealt with in the last 6 months since leaving the organization would have sent me before. Like it would have been bad, but I was able to handle these things now that I'm outside with a clearer head, and be more rational and be kinder to myself about the decisions that I've had to make.
And understanding, I think, and being like, okay, this is where we are now. It's not a big, I don't want to say it's not a big deal. For me personally, it's, I don't know for you, but for me personally, this is where I am today. Does not mean I have to be here tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Yes. And just the thought that I am not a good for nothing slave.
Girl! Finally had that meditation one day, and that shit hit me in my face that I believed still that I was a good for nothing slave. I sat here and cried, and I'm like, no, I'm not. And there's this little voice in my head. I was like, no, I'm not a good for nothing. I'm like, I'm me. You made me. God, girl, go ahead, keep preaching.
Yeah, and when I realized, like, I was not born evil.
No, you weren't.
Sin doesn't actually exist. At least that's what I subscribe to now.
I subscribe to that one too. Yeah.
And all these other things that I'd been taught that just really wrecked my confidence. That women are lesser. That all this stuff, and like just the level, the way I'm able to make decisions, the way I'm able to handle situations now is just insane. Like I don't recognize myself from 6 months ago before I left.
So is that the thing that you said in your questionnaire? You said in your questionnaire, the personality change is the one thing you would love to warn people about. Is that the part?
Yeah.
That you would, okay, so go into that a little bit. I have other questions too, but go into that since we're here.
So for sure, personality change is a big thing. At least it was for me. And I become much more confident in myself. I'm more Christ-like now than I ever was as a Christian. I'm more patient. There's just a lot of things. I'm no longer afraid to do things.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of anything. I'm excited to live. And maybe this just comes with the fact that I'm very young. I'm 25. I turned 25 this year. So my frontal lobe has just fully developed. Sure. So maybe that's part of why the personality change. But it affected my marriage a lot, because while we were very much best friends, there were just a lot of things that I had just changed. I rapidly evolved. And so it was kind of like we had to go through the dating phase again. Mm-hmm. We had to start getting to know each other again, because I was kind of turning into a person that my husband didn't recognize, and not necessarily in a bad way, because he said that he was excited to get to know me, who I was now, right, and that he was loving the person I was becoming. But we ended up not fitting together anymore, which is really sad.
Is he still a witness?
Yeah, he's still a witness.
So, let me know if I need to cut this out.
Okay.
Is it because you outgrew him in some type of way?
That's how I felt. I was starting to feel like I was outgrowing him. And we both realized we probably wouldn't have gotten married if we hadn't been witnesses.
Exactly.
But we were both the best option
at the time
that was available to either of us. And we were best friends. But you know, a marriage
is supposed to be that mic so well, didn't he? He carried that mic and he held the book so well.
Yep. And we just got along great. But we both needed different things out of a relationship.
Yeah.
And like, one thing is, since I stopped being a witness, I want kids now. I've never wanted kids. I've always been opposed to children. Stinky kids, get them away from me.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Going to therapy, one, I got past the issue of being afraid of becoming like my parents. Mm-hmm. And two, I realized there is no paradise for me to wait 1,000 years and then have a baby. Yeah. If I want to have kids, I'm going to have them now, which my husband didn't have that same view. He still didn't want kids. And that's a really big thing to try to compromise on.
Yeah.
And I didn't think either of us deserved to have to compromise on that.
Right.
If you don't want kids, you should never have kids. If you do want kids, you should have them.
Right.
And there were a lot of other things, a lot of little things. Like the fact that if he wants to continue being a witness, he deserves to be with someone who's going to sit by his side and clap at his public talk and go out to eat with everyone afterwards.
And be able to support everybody when they go through their BS and hug them. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I want someone who will do shrooms with me. So we grew apart, even though it was only really me growing, which made things really hard, because I did feel like I was just vibrating at a higher level than him, and I was just continuing to outgrow him. And it was very hard, but I did decide to end our marriage. Mm-hmm. There were a few other reasons too. But it was a very nice split.
Good.
Amicable, because I mean, he's a great guy. He is the definition of what a Christian should be.
Right.
So, but it was still really hard to have to come to terms with that. This marriage wasn't serving us anymore, in part because I challenged who I was and what I wanted out of life. And when you realize that this life is really all you have, you want to live it to the fullest. Exactly. You want to do
all you can,
everything that you never got to do. Like,
exactly.
It was really hard. I went back to Ohio. I went home to Ohio to see my best friends in the whole world who I grew up with in the Kingdom Hall, but then they left 10 years ago. They left the organization. And so I hadn't seen them in so long. And I was able to go back and celebrate my first birthday with them. And I have 2 stepbrothers who were never witnesses either. And so like I had my little family there celebrating my birthday, having the time of my life, but my husband's not here. Right. How can I have the best day of my life without my spouse?
And for those who are not for those who are not in an organization, they look at you strange, like, why is he not here? Or what's going on? Wait, and this is kind of this ambiance in the room, like they don't get it. And you're like, I'm good, let's go.
Yeah, but it did hurt. It hurt to think how many best days of my life am I going to have that he's not going to be here for because it's against his religion. And that was a really big deal to me. And it was a big deal to him too, because he hated missing out on that. But I told him, I was like, you're invited, but I'm respecting your choice to not come. And it was something that was really hard for both of us. And then the fact here locally, I'm making new friends with worldly people, you know, my new peers, and his friends who used to be our friends act like I don't exist. And I told him, like, that really sucks for me that we are out and about at a grocery store, people say hi to you and pretend I'm not there.
Yeah.
Or that you hang out with people who won't make eye contact with me, won't say thank you if I hold the door open for them.
Yeah.
And that really, really hurts. And I didn't want to force him to be like me or Jehovah. But I felt myself coming to that point. But then there was something else that happened that was a whole other long story that ended up being the final thing that I was like, okay, yeah, this has to, we got to be done. And so it was really quick from the time that, because we had decided like, okay, we're going to try to work on this. We're going to see a marriage counselor. We found a Catholic marriage counselor because we figured that was at least not a witness, but still scriptural, like he would still understand where Cody was coming from scripturally. But we ended up calling it, and it sucks, but at the same time I know it's what's best for both of us. I know that we would both just be holding each other back, and I realize now that it was really inevitable. We could have kept trying to make it work for another 5 years,
and it would have been a whole wall.
And maybe we would have both come to the same conclusion. He would have agreed, yeah, it's time to end it, because he didn't want to, but it was like a no-brainer for me at some point, that this just has to be done. And so
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that is something that I was not prepared to happen when I left. I did not think that I would change that much so quickly that I would want to not be married anymore.
I'm proud of you that you didn't force him. There's that scripture, there's that unbeknownst, that's that rule in the witnesses that's like, you know, well, you're going to win her over, or they're going to take you out type thing. And like I tell those in the, you know, those coming out, like, the world doesn't like force you out. Think for yourself. You're going to, once the door opens in your head, it's going to force out itself. I'm proud of you for not forcing him. I'm proud of you for respecting his boundaries and creating your own at the same time. That's a big deal. It's very hard. That's why I'm saying I'm proud. I'm like dead ass. I am proud of you at your age and at your like I want to give you a round of applause for that, because
thank you.
I got women out here now, my age or younger, that's still learning that coming out, and sometimes with me, it's just one of those things that it's not taught, it's felt. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And for you to know that and feel that, but at the same time respecting both, creating your own boundaries, but also respecting his at the same time, was something that we never were taught at all. And in the organization, I'm very proud of you for honoring that. So good job on that and your growth. And yes, changing as a witness is very hard, because Yeah, once you start that one domino effect, everything else, and that's the reason why they have this whole hold on you. I don't know how it is now, because when I got out, the internet was just becoming big, but they didn't have jw.org then. But it's this whole thing where once you start questioning, your brain opens, and that's what our brains are supposed to do, is to open, is to question, is to go, is that purple behind me or red or white? Like, okay, and then why is it orange? If I see orange, then why is that orange? And being okay with that. Maybe we all see purple, fine, cool, but if someone sees orange, then cool, that's what their viewpoint is, and it's okay. But not just having a hard, fast rule that this has to be one color. And that's what got me with the LGBTQ community. I'm glad you spoke on that too. I'm so honored that you spoke on that, because that's the reason why I started a nonprofit for the Exodus group, seeing so many people being found suicidal or wanting to just kill themselves because they couldn't be themselves in the organization. It just hurt my heart. And in my head, I'm like, okay, God created me. If God is love and then I'm in love, so why can't I love who I wanted to love? And it kept going through this whole cycle that I just couldn't wrap my head around. And yeah, I love your story. What made you get baptized at 13? I'm gonna go.
My dad.
Right.
Well, it was partly my dad, partly my competitive spirit. No part of it was because I wanted to dedicate my life to Jehovah.
And that's where I want to get to. Okay.
There was a girl in my hall who was a few months younger than me, and we were always competing. And she got baptized in December and didn't tell anyone she was getting baptized. I was like, she's not beating me. But I ended up not getting baptized until May. So she did beat me, but also my dad was constantly in my ear. I can't save you when Armageddon comes. I'm just fellowshipped. I don't even know if I'll get through. I can't save you. You're old enough to know better. And so I got baptized and I was excited about it. I thought I did the right thing, but I remember when I went to the elders to ask about going over the questions, the brother said, "Did you dedicate yourself to Jehovah in prayer?" And I said, "Yeah." I didn't.
Right.
I didn't. I didn't do that till years after I was baptized, was when I decided, yeah, this is what I want to do. But yeah, 13 was way too young to get baptized, but I feel like I really was bullied into that decision.
They're definitely doing that now. Second question. Wait, what changed in the Zoom meetings? You said that how did the Zoom meetings change and make things weird? What's weird in Zoom meetings now?
I think the witnesses just became unhinged. People, their comments were tactless. I would listen to some things that were in the talks, because 2020, summer 2020 was when Black Lives Matter movement became really big.
Right. Yeah.
And that really affected me, because I'm like one of 12 Black people that live in my town.
You're in Alaska. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Alaska.
Yeah, you're like one of one. Okay.
Yeah. That's when everyone asked me, who did your hair? I did. Who else is here? Who else is going to be able to do my hair? But that really affected me very harshly. And it affected my husband too, because he's married to a Black woman. He's seen my struggles. He's seen me be profiled. He's a white man. But he had seen how people treated us differently. And he also saw how people treated me differently when I had blonde hair versus when I had braids, and when I looked Black versus when I could have been anything, and stuff like that. Right. So that was a big deal for me. And the way the friends talked about it after the meeting was gross to me, because there was one other Black sister in our congregation, and someone mentioned the riots in Portland, and she said, "Oh, that silly Black Lives Matter stuff." And I just hung up from the meeting. And I was like, I can't, like, that's disgusting. Because I kept going back to, was it Hosea or Hezekiah, one of the H guys in the Bible.
Yeah, I don't remember. Go ahead.
Who would say, "How long, O Jehovah, are you going to allow this to happen? Mm-hmm. How long are you going to allow this to happen?" And so I just kept remembering, like, okay, faithful servants who got their own books of the Bible begged Jehovah for change, asked Jehovah why he allowed this stuff to happen. And so it really hurt my feelings to hear people in the congregation call these problems silly.
Yeah.
Because they aren't silly. They're real problems. So that was one thing, because that really, really affected me. The other thing was the homophobic comments. Mm-hmm. And then, like, just the blatant disrespect for the people in our community. Because there was one pastor that lived here. She's gone now, but she ran the Episcopal church. And she, honestly, I swear she was basically Jesus again. Mm-hmm. Because she was always doing these charity events. She would help out with all kinds of stuff. There was an atheist group that started on Facebook, and she would engage in conversation with people, but like not try to preach at them and everything. And during the service meetings, people would just roast her. And she was one of the nicest people I've ever met. Like, I love this woman. And she was a true ally to a lot of different groups. She was always there working with indigenous people, because in Alaska there's a lot of natives, right, that are a lot of times overlooked. And so she was an ally for them. She was an ally for Black Lives Matter. And like, I didn't feel like her allyship was performative in any way ever. She was genuinely just such a kind soul. But people would like laugh about her and say, "Oh, she's so confused. She doesn't know what she thinks, blah, 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 blah," because she's friends with atheists, because she is nice to gay people, and so like that triggered me. It's just like how unhinged everyone was. Nobody filtered anything they said. People were making gross comments, and it just made me really look at the Friends a different way.
I'm so glad that you I keep saying that, sorry, but yeah. I am. Like, I never saw that until I was very much like your dad, physically out but mentally in for a long time. And then when I finally woke up, like, all the feelings hit me at one time. So I was the one like your father, like, you know, still trying to live by the rules, but still having sex with the guy that I just met at the club, because it felt good. Or the girl, depending on the day. But I'm glad that you were able to find your way, and you're fresh out. Like, you know, you're 6 months out?
Almost 6 months.
Okay. All right. Cool. Mm-hmm. All right. So what's one thing that you want to tell those who are coming out now, who might have suicidal thoughts, who might have, who's going through something or feel the same way that you did coming out?
It will get better. It will absolutely get better. It's hard, and it will be hard for a while, depending on the circumstances. If you're close to your family, it's going to be harder for longer, but you will be welcomed into at least the online community of XJWs. Are some of the nicest people I've ever, like, it's so funny how easily I connected to so many people. Like, I consider a couple of these people some of my best friends now.
Yeah, I'm coming to visit you right away. I don't know when. It's going to be in the summer. We already talked about that, but yeah,
when it's warm enough.
When it's warm, because I don't do cold that well, but we'll talk about that later. But I'm coming to visit you, yes.
But yeah, you will make great friends. Worldly people are not scary. They make great friends, honestly. And even my husband noticed this too, how my new worldly friends treated me versus how his witness friends were treating him going through our process. Because I would ask him, when I first left, like the first day, because I announced it on Instagram. I was controlling the story. So like, I made my announcement on Instagram. I wasn't going to let anyone say, "Oh, she cheated on her husband. She did this, and this." I was like, nope, I'm controlling this. So the day I posted it, he had several people text him and say, "Oh, hang in there, bud. Let us know if you need anything," but never heard from anyone again. Whereas I had people, strangers on the internet who I never met, XJW, and just random people, checking on me. I still have people checking on me
Yeah.
all the time, seeing how I'm doing with this process, asking if I need anything, and just the difference. You don't really know unconditional love until you leave the organization.
Ooh, I'm gonna steal that
don't
quote, girl.
know.
I'm gonna steal that quote.
Because that's what they say. They say we love our brothers and sisters unconditionally. There are so many conditions. You do not understand true love until you leave. You don't really know love of neighbor until you leave. So it's really hard right now, but it will be so much better. It is going to be worth it, and keep going if you're having a tough time.
Contact somebody, but yeah, get therapy. But yes, girl.
Oh yeah, definitely get therapy. Start therapy before you leave. Also have an exit strategy.
Yeah. I'm working on people with exit strategies now because I just jumped and whatever. I wish I had an exit strategy, but definitely get an exit strategy. And I'm glad you said that too, is that at one point the exit strategy is going to fall apart. It's going to go faster than you think, but at least have the plan, because with at least the plan, you can at least control the first half of your strategy and at least save your money, depending on who you're living with.
Yes. Yeah, save your money, make sure you have a safe place to live.
Yeah, until I can get my nonprofit going. Yes. Celeste, thank you. I'm going to definitely have you on again because you hit so many points that I'm not able to save right now, but oh my goodness. You're about to make me cry.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
I'm going to contact you after we finish, but I am Angie B. This is Celeste. She is out. You guys, I will put her contact information, her Instagram on here. Welcome her out to the XJW community. And yes, I'm crying. You guys have a great day. Thank you for joining the Exodus group. And we will definitely have you on again. Thank you. Have a great night. You're welcome. Thank you, Celeste.